everyone. For International Women's Week, PISA wanted to celebrate some of the incredible women here at BU. We had the opportunity to interview Dr. Heather McKeen-Edwards, a professor in the International Studies and Politics Department here at Bishop's. Dr. Heather McKeen-Edwards completed a PhD in political science from McMaster University in 2009. Her research interests revolve around global political economy, particularly issues in finance and transnational public-private governance, as well as global sport policy. She has co-authored a book with Tony Porter, Transnational Financial Associations and the Governance of Global Finance, Assembling Wealth and Power. Her recent work has focused on policies and regulations around consumer finance and household debt. At Bishop's, she teaches a range of courses in international relations, international political economy, and sport policy. We spoke with Dr. McKeen-Edwards about her career and interests, as well as some advice for women on how to be successful within our department. We hope that you take the time to listen to Dr. McKeen-Edwards, an incredibly successful woman that we are proud to have here at BU.
Hi, Dr. McKeen. Thank you so much for agreeing on doing this interview with us. We are really happy to be able to feature you as one of our female professors in our department. So our first question is, we would like to hear a bit about what is your experience, what is your current position, your education. Can you talk a bit about that?
So I'm an associate professor here at Bishop's in politics and international studies, and I've been here over a decade, working in a variety of different positions. In fact, I've been here since we were a Department of Political Studies, and there was no international studies major. So I've seen the department evolve quite a bit in my time here, and that's been exciting. I'm originally from out west, and I did my undergraduate degree at the University of Manitoba in politics and economics, and then all my graduate work in politics and international studies at McMaster. Canadian, sort of educated all the way through. And I would say the other thing I guess that's useful is, although you probably know me because I teach a range of politics and policy classes, my real specific interests are global governance, particularly international political economy. So governance of the financial system and sort of the role of global finance, and then a secondary area, which is around governance of sport and sport policies and things like that. So I hope that's kind of a basic introduction, and I hope useful to you. And we can go from there.
So how did you know you wanted to get into this career?
So that was really interesting to me. I was thinking about it. I was just even trying to think about it a few months ago when I got asked this by a student. And the one thing I know is it wasn't always the career I thought I'd have. So I didn't come into university thinking this was where I was going at all. I'm the first person in my family to go to university, so this was not sort of the end of the road. And the other thing was that I couldn't think of an aha moment. So that moment where you decide this is what you're going to do. Instead, it was a lot of little things and littler moments. I found an area I was really interested in, which is this intersection of politics and the economy, and governance, and trying to see how the system worked that way. And I wanted to keep studying that. So I looked at graduate school, and I essentially just made decisions to do the things I found interesting and to do the things that seemed the most relevant and interesting to me each step of the way. And this is the path that emerged. The thought where I found I could do what I liked, and I thought I could contribute something. What's interesting is I really like being an academic. I find it incredibly challenging and rewarding. I really like that I get to do research and have that curiosity, but also really have the challenges and rewards of teaching and working with students and working sort of in education more generally. And so it kind of worked out that I've landed where I'm passionate about, but I don't really have an aha moment. And I definitely didn't come in thinking this is where I would be sort of a decade or two after I finished school. It was not sort of my plan. It was by the time I was getting into my PhD, but not when I started.
So did you have at any point a role model, someone you were looking up to go into this career?
Okay. It's a really interesting question. I wouldn't say I had one role model. I think that's really important. A number of different people were really helpful to me at all sorts of different points and in different ways. I got really important advice from a variety of people, and they really helped me figure out how to navigate this world and what kind of career I wanted to have, what my skills were, my strengths were, and areas that I needed to improve, areas I need to work on and become stronger at. If I had to pick sort of a role model, I had an amazing supervisor at McMaster. So I worked under Tony Porter at McMaster, who was an absolutely wonderful graduate supervisor and really good in a whole variety of ways. He was really open when you needed questions and giving sort of really effective and fruitful advice. But he also sort of was a good mentor in the sense of seeing how he carried himself and ran his career. And that was very helpful to me, especially early in my career when you're trying to build things. And then at Bishop's, there were a number of people who are in the department, some who've now retired, who gave me really good advice on how to navigate Bishop's. And teaching at an undergraduate level, I came in without a lot of teaching experience. So how do you do that well? So I would say that it's not quite one person, but I do think mentorship is incredibly important. And I've benefited from a lot of mentors, some more long-term than others, who've really helped me build.
Kind of going in that vein, when you first started working or when you first started with your postgraduate work, did you work with many women or were there many women in the field? And has that changed at all since then?
So there were women in the field. There were definitely women, international political economists, some very well known. There were definitely people you could look up to. I worked with a few of them over the years. I would say there are more women now, and that's a really nice thing to see. But it wasn't like sort of coming into a brand new space. I also think there's been a lot more attention towards diversity of voice, towards expanding how we study and what we study. And I like the idea that that's going to keep expanding. I find that really beneficial for the way we understand the world. International relations, politics, policy, they're complicated and they're not necessarily something I think that benefits from having a unified voice. And so the more we see of this, the more we'll get, and we definitely do see some more women. Now at Bishop's, I was the first woman in the department, or at least the first one in a very, very long time, to be here in a kind of full-time position. And so I definitely got to see that part grow as well, with some of the colleagues that have come after me and some of the really interesting insights that they're bringing to the table now, in addition to our really supportive colleagues in the department who value that kind of voice. It's nice to have.
And so, what advice do you have for women who wants to be successful in your team, in your field? Sorry.
Okay, that's a really good question, and I think this applies probably broadly to all fields. So you can talk about how to be a successful academic, and there's lots of different ways that can be done. There's some things you have to reach, but just even more generally, a lot of students don't necessarily want to be academics, but they do want to work in politics or international studies, or they want to work on these kinds of issues. For me, I think the biggest advice I would be is that it's going to be hard work, and that just kind of buckle down for it and work hard. That's okay. And that it's going to be challenging at times, and you just need to sort of work hard. And if you work hard consistently, that will benefit you. But I think that gets tied with something else, which is taking advantage of the opportunities that come your way. Sometimes the smallest opportunity can become something really beneficial in the long term. Sometimes really interesting things come along that are options and opportunities. And if you can, take advantage of them to the best of your abilities. The other thing is that you may have to make some of those opportunities happen. So you may have to take a small opportunity and work on it and transition it and build it into something even more than it was. So I think it's a combination of those two. The opportunities come along, or you can try to make them, but you have to be able to work hard, and you have to be ready for those opportunities when they show up. And that's the hard work part. I think as well, since you've asked about women, but I would say this is also relevant to a lot of people, remember to take or accept credit for your skills and successes. So when you are complimented for something or rewarded for something, or you've done something, remember that it's okay to take some credit for that, to sort of own that. because if you don't, someone else likely will. And that's an important thing to learn. And how to do that well is something that takes time to learn, how to find that pitch. So those would be my three kind of main pieces of advice: to just work hard, to take advantage when opportunities come your way, if at all possible, and to then, for the things you've earned, the skills and success you've built, remember that it's okay to take some credit for that, and or the proper amount of credit for that, I should say.
And kind of to contrast that, do you have any advice for men to be allies to women who are who are working in the field of politics and international studies, or trying to break into that field?
That's a really good question. I think there already are a lot of male allies in the field, and I think that it's great if someone is looking to do that. It's an important development in the field, and allyship is part of that. I think it's really important to listen, and that's sometimes hard to do, is to listen really consciously and carefully, and then reflect on that, so you actually hear what's coming from female colleagues, from sort of more broad societal trends, so you're aware. And then as an ally, you can use that in adapting your own actions, being conscious of your own actions, but also in where you can help amplify and not simply speak for women. And so as an ally, I think that listening skill is important. I think it's important across the spectrum for all of us. If we can listen better and actually take time to listen rather than just think about how to respond, we will likely find a space where it can be a very fruitful combination.
We talked a bit about like success and advice. Did you see any barrier for women to actually succeed in the field, and have you faced some yourself?
Okay, so barriers are interesting. As with most groups, I think there are structural barriers. There are more systemic structures, some of which are being increasingly more questioned, and also work is being done now to sort of address some of those barriers and inequalities and inequities in the system. I would say I've seen some of them. If you're thinking about academia, there is research that shows, for example, female authors are not cited as much. They don't tend to publish in the same spaces as much on the whole. That teaching evaluations, for example, are gendered. And things like that. And so there are some things that you're presented with. Now, I think it's really important to realize that a lot of these then play out in very personal and individualized ways. So it's really hard to talk about generalities. So there are barriers, but I think those barriers are things that you work to change, both individually and societally, and you work to overcome. I would say the other thing you may run into, especially academically, is that a lot of big career things are happening right around the time a lot of other things may be happening in your personal space. So things like family and work-life balance and how to manage that. And while all academics face this, no matter where they sit on the gender spectrum, this can play out in different ways depending on how your gendered role is. Again, individually, but there's a sort of systemic system there. So there's some structural things and that sort of thing. Does that answer your question?
Yes, yeah, thank you.
Hey.
Yeah, we're always never specifically want to ask about, the work-life balance, because I think that's a question that is unfairly asked to women quite a bit more than men, but it's definitely an important structural thing, like an expectation that's put on us.
I was going to say, yeah, and I wouldn't necessarily say there's a single work-life balance. It's just the reality that all people face these questions about work-life balance. And then if we think about structurally how those play out, that's something that is navigated. But I do think there's an individual component to this. Every individual brings an intersectional identity and a set of relationships into these structural systems, if that makes sense. So it is a fair question. Do I think it's a barrier in all cases? No. Is it a possible barrier? Potentially, yeah.
And so I guess as you reflect back on your career so far, you've had many very impressive achievements. And what would you say is personally you consider your biggest achievement? That's
a really good question. You know what? I I wouldn't pick out one individual thing per se, and I think that's a bit about where I came from. If I really think about what I'm the most proud of, it's the fact that I have this particular career. Right? It's a broader thing than that, and then all the things within it. I have a tenure stream job as an academic. I have a job at a place that allows me to balance the things I'm really passionate about, so I can be actively involved in teaching and doing things in the department, as you know, but I can still take on challenging research and write and do that kind of work. And when I started my academic journey right after high school, this wasn't where I necessarily saw as even a possibility for me. So I'm really quite proud of that. I think that would be my biggest achievement. And then within that, there's been a lot of high points, and there's been a lot of really interesting things I've been able to do, as you mentioned. And I'm really proud and happy to have worked with all the people over the years who've helped me do that. But I think my biggest achievement overall is just sort of my bigger fact that I have this career, and that I was able to somehow achieve it, at least to this point. I've been able to achieve it, and that's been a nice thing, I guess.
Yeah, that's perfect. I think that holistic approach is really nice to hear, because I think a lot of times we're told to focus on, that one thing that you achieved, the one paper you published, or that one job that you did. And so it's nice to hear that, like, the path and the result is the biggest achievement, as opposed to maybe the steps.
Yeah, that one thing on the CV that's going to make the difference for me is this. And I really think the whole is a lot more interesting and rewarding. At least for me, it was. Let's put it that way.
Well, I wanted to ask, as we kind of near the end of the interview, is there anything else you'd like to share with students or anyone who's watching about either your experience, advice, recommendations, anything else you'd like to say?
Hmm. Well, I think the only thing I'd like to say is that I'm really happy to see um, the people who I get to work with, the students I get to work with, and who are likely going to watch this. I'm in this field, and I teach and work in this field because I think it's really important, and it's nice to see people engaged in that, and trying to think about how we can build structures, how we can build things and address issues societally. It's something I think is really important, and it's something that deserves attention. So for me, I just think the thing I would say for anybody who's watching this, especially in this field, is that's it's valuable work. It can be tough at times, I'm sure, and rewarding at other times. And it's just a matter of sort of figuring out your space in it, and then continuing forward. I think that's really, really important.
Thank you so much for speaking to us for International Women's Day. We're really proud to be able to highlight some of the fantastic female professors in the department and in the faculty here at Bishop. So we really appreciate you speaking to us, sharing your experience and your pieces of advice for students, both male and female. So thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
No worries. Thank you very much. And I'm really excited to see the other. I'm really excited to see the other interviews. I'll be honest, and what other people had to say, as well as the insights that you are bringing to the table. So, thank you as well.